Hello, this is Jeff Allen, the Mind Whisperer. I want to speak with you very briefly today about subpersonalities. Here's just a few of the parts of us, and they tend to come in pairs. So we've got the thinking part of us versus the feeling, the pusher as opposed to the part of us that's in free flow and tends to be okay with things, the judgmental part of us that's being judgmental of ourselves and of other people, as opposed to the accepting part of us. And then, of course, there's the perfectionist as opposed to the slob, and a person who is more flexible. Okay, this is just a few of very, very many. What we're really talking about here is an over-identification with any one of these. Now, for example, if I have an over-identification with pusher, that means I will have a lot of things, I'll be pushed to do things in my life. The pusher doesn't really care what we do, it just makes sure things get done. Now, if I have an over-identification with the pusher, that's called my primary self. Okay. Now, the opposite of that, this part of me that's flow and whatnot, we call this the disowned self. Okay. What we're looking for here is when there is an over-identification, there's an imbalance. Okay. So, for example, let's bring that over here now and have a look at an illustration here. If I have an over-identification with the perfectionist, it's going to be at the expense of the flexible side of me, that, even to the point of being a slob. Okay, so the point is here is not to eradicate either, but rather to get balance. So what that would look like is perfectionist would move down here, and we would sit here, and in doing so, that would allow us to have access to the part of us that represents the flexible or the slob. Now, specifically what that would look like, when we sit here in the middle, this point here is called aware ego. When we come through the aware ego and we can spot what's going on, that gives us choice. Okay? So we can sit here and then we can move out here and we can become a perfectionist as need be through choice. Okay? At the same time, we know when to stop, we know when to quit, we know when we can sit down and do nothing, and we can actually be okay about that. Okay, and our standards don't have to be high. It's, sometimes good enough is, near enough is good enough. So what that could look like here is, instead of being a perfectionist, because I now have choice, I can sit down here at, say, half-mast, and I can do a job and I can put it out and I can spot something in it and go, you know what, this really doesn't make a difference and it's okay. When I'm identified with a perfectionist, it's not okay. It doesn't matter if it costs me extra $1,000, I have to get it right. So we don't want that, we want balance. Okay, now, question is, with all these various parts of us, and there are hundreds of them, how do we get change? Three things. Number one, any personal development work that you do will help you with that. Number two, if you have too great an over-identification, then probably what would be recommended would be a practitioner, somebody who deals with this kind of stuff to help you. Okay, in the meantime, here's something that can really help you quite a bit. Look for the weak link in your chain. So, for example, if you notice somebody is a perfectionist and it really bothers you, it upsets you, chances are you are over-identified with its opposite. That means you will have an over-identification with flexibility. Okay? So that means it won't be okay for you to be a perfectionist. It won't be okay for you to dot the I's and cross the T's. And this is where the imbalance comes in. So what that looks like then is that if this was the case, and you had this over-identification, so you'd have an over-identification up here with the flexible part of you, but at the same time, you've got a disowned self going on down here called the perfectionist. And so it's very difficult for you to sit here in the middle and access equally both sides. So coming back over to here, so this is what we're looking for. Okay, so that's just one of the ways of knowing, is to look to see how you're being impacted. Okay, very brief coverage. Just wanted to remind you that we're going to be covering these kinds of things and much, much more at my weekly classes coming up at the Carrara Community Centre. That will begin next Tuesday night, April 16th, from 7 to 9 p.m. Look forward to seeing you then.